Do you remember where you were when you heard about the planes crashing into the World Trade Centers on 9/11? Maybe some of you in the room are of a certain age that you remember exactly where you were when you heard that President JFK was assassinated. Maybe on a more positive note, you remember exactly where you were the moment you got into the traveling sports team, or you got the lead role in the musical, or you got that long anticipated acceptance letter, or you landed the dream job. Or maybe some of you in the room remember exactly where you were and what it was like when you became a parent for the first time. And you held that little newborn in your arms and looked into their eyes, and you knew your life would never be the same, that a whole new world was opening up to you. Friends, that's what Easter morning is like. Easter morning is an I remember exactly where I was kind of moment. Easter morning is when a whole new world is opening up to us. And I believe for us today, Easter can change everything in our lives if we dare to hope. So this morning, I want to explore this Easter story out of Matthew chapter 28, beginning in verse 1. Matthew chapter 28, beginning in verse 1. After the Sabbath, as the first day of the week was dawning, Mary Magdalene and the other Mary went to see the tomb. And suddenly there was a great earthquake, for an angel of the Lord descending from heaven came and rolled back the stone and sat on it. His appearance was like lightning and his clothing white as snow. For fear of him, the guards shook and became like dead men. But the angel said to the women, "Do not be afraid. I know that you are looking for Jesus who has been crucified. He is not here. He has been raised as he said. Come and see the place where he lay. Then go quickly and tell his disciples he has been raised from the dead. And indeed, he is going ahead of you to Galilee. There you will see him. This is my message for you." So they left the tomb quickly with fear and great joy and ran to tell his disciples. Suddenly, Jesus met them and said, "Greetings." And they came to him and took hold of his feet and worshiped him. Then Jesus said to them, "Do not be afraid. Go and tell my brothers to go to Galilee. There they will see me." I love how this passage begins after the Sabbath at the first day of the week as it was dawning. Or I love how scholar N.T. Wright translates this passage. Dawn was breaking on the first day of the week. The Sabbath was over. Mary Magdalene and the other Mary went to look at the tomb. Dawn was breaking. Light was sparkling out of darkness. Life was springing forth from death. Jesus had been resurrected. A monumental shift had occurred in the world, and we just needed somebody to witness it. And here come Mary, and they show up at the tomb. Now, friends, I have a confession for you all this morning, and it's Easter, and we're all friends here, so here we go. Here's my confession this morning. Every other year when I've read the Easter story, I always pictured the two Marys coming to the tomb weeping, blinded by their tears, mourning the loss of their dear friend Jesus, just looking for a peace and calm place to mourn their grief, similar to how you and I might go to a cemetery to mourn the loss of a loved one. And so I picture them coming weeping to the tomb, just looking for some peace and quiet, but they don't get anything but peace and quiet, right? We just read that there's a chaotic scene going on at the tomb, that all of a sudden there's an earthquake and an angel's descending from heaven and rolling back the stone, and the men, the guards that were there, are so terrified about what's going on, they pass out in fear. And so you just have these two women standing before an angel. And every other year, I thought they came to the tomb blinded by their tears and their sorrow. But this year, when I read the story, I wondered if Mary and Mary didn't come to the tomb blinded by their tears. What if they came to the tomb blinded by their hope? You see, time and time again throughout Jesus' ministry, he kept telling his disciples, his followers, that he was going to die and come back to life. But they clearly weren't getting it. That's why he had to keep repeating himself. And it's very clear that none of the men disciples got what Jesus was saying, because the moment things got hard, the moment Jesus was arrested, they denied and fled and abandoned Jesus. But not Mary and Mary, because Mary and Mary were there at the foot of the cross. They were there when they saw Jesus' body placed in the tomb, and they showed up Easter morning. And I wonder if they showed up Easter morning not blinded by their tears, but blinded by their hope, because maybe they dared to believe that what Jesus said, he actually meant it and it was actually true. Maybe they dared to have hope, and perhaps it was their audacious hope that allowed them to be the first witnesses of the resurrection on that Easter morning. And so they're standing in front of this angel, and the angel says to them, "Do not be afraid. Do not be afraid." That's what the angel Gabriel told Mary when she found out she's become the mom of the very Son of God. Do not be afraid. That's what those angels told those smelly shepherds the night on which Jesus was born. Don't be afraid. I'm bringing you good news of great joy for all people. And on Easter morning, you can hear echoes of the Christmas story as the angel says, do not be afraid, because that tiny babe born in Bethlehem has grown up to become the resurrected King. Christ is risen. He is risen indeed. That this has the power to change everything, that salvation has come for all people, that I'm proclaiming great news of great joy for you on this Easter morning. You don't have to be afraid because Christ is risen. He is risen indeed. And I love the Greek in this passage for a moment. We'll look at this just for a second, a little Greek lesson. In verse 5, the word that we translate there that I have underlined as was crucified, in Greek, it's something we call a perfect participle, which is really a fancy way of a verb that is a completed action that has ongoing consequences. So what the author here is saying is that the cross is a completed action. Jesus is done, finished, being crucified. He will never face death again. That is a completed action, done, finished in the past. But the cross has ongoing consequences. That because the tomb is empty, that means that fear and failure and death no longer get the final say, but that the tomb is empty and it can change everything if we dare to hope. And so we don't have to be afraid. And the angel says, hey, if you don't believe me, come and see. Come and see the place where he laid, and he ain't here no more, that Christ is risen. And you got to go and tell others about this. And so the women become not just the first witnesses of the resurrection, they become the first preachers of the Easter message. And I'm reminded as I was thinking about this, of course it makes sense. Jesus came into the world through his mother Mary. Of course the Easter message would go out into the world through Mary and Mary, as they become the first preachers of the good news of Easter. And so they hurry on their way, and on their way, breathlessly, they run into Jesus. And the Greek here is also beautiful, because if you read it in the original Greek, Jesus comes up to the Marys and just kind of says, like, casually, hey, how you doing? It's a very casual greeting. And I wonder if Jesus has a very casual greeting for these ladies because he knows they've had way too much drama already for one morning. But he has this very calm, casual greeting with them, and they fall down and worship him, just like those wise men did to worship the newborn king. And I bet Mary and Mary never forgot the moment when they laid their eyes on the resurrected king, that they became the first people to see the risen Lord. And I bet they could tell you exactly where they were, and it felt like a whole new world was opening up to them, a whole new way to be human. And I bet they remembered exactly how Jesus' face looked when he looked at them and said, do not be afraid. Go and tell my brothers and sisters to go to Galilee. There they will see me. I love this verse because Jesus doesn't say to Mary and Mary, hey, go tell those deserters, or go tell those scoundrels, or go tell those guys who abandoned me. No, Jesus says, go tell my brothers and sisters. That I think in this moment, Mary and Mary realized that all had been forgiven, all had been healed, that the separation and distance was gone, that a whole new world was opening up to them, and there was still work that Jesus needed them to do. And so in that moment, they realized they were not just preachers of the resurrection, they were agents of reconciliation, that all had been forgiven, that a new world was breaking forth that Easter morning. That Easter can change everything for us. We don't have to be afraid. But this Easter, my question for you is, what are you afraid of? There's so many things we're afraid of, right? Maybe we're afraid of failure. You're afraid of death, of illness, of losing the people we love. Maybe we're afraid that we'll never measure up, that we'll never find meaning and purpose. Maybe we're afraid that we're too much or that we're not enough. Maybe we're afraid about our finances or fear for our family. What are you afraid of? And there's so many things that we're afraid of, and I believe that fear is one of the biggest barriers of our life, keeping us from following the way of Jesus, keeping us from being all that we were created to be. But the message of Easter echoes the message of Christmas. Do not be afraid. Friends, you don't have to be afraid because Jesus has come. We don't have to be afraid because Christ is risen. We don't have to be afraid because the tomb is empty, and that changes everything. We don't have to be afraid because the worst thing is never the last thing. And friends, if it's not good, then we're not at the end yet, because Christ promises that all will be renewed and restored and redeemed one day. That is the hope of Easter. We don't have to be afraid, and we can dare to hope. So this Easter, what if I dared you to hope? Mary and Mary dared to hope, and that changed everything for them. What if you dared to hope? What if you dared to hope that reconciliation in your family is possible? What if you dared to hope that forgiveness and peace is possible? What if you dared to hope that healing is possible? What if you dared to hope that your marriage is going to make it? What if you dared to hope that your addiction would not control your life forever? What if you dared to hope that you would be able to have a new relationship with your children one day? What if you dared to hope that there is going to be peace for your what seems like never-ending anxiety? What if you dared to hope that God is crazy about you and God wants to have a relationship with you? What if you dared to hope this Easter? And church, I wish I could promise you that everything you dare to hope for this morning would happen. I wish I could promise that for you. But I can't make that promise. But what I can say that I know for certain today is that it is not foolish to hope. In fact, because of Easter morning, I think it's foolish not to hope. Because if a young, unwed teenager from the ghetto of Nazareth can become the mother of the Son of God, then nothing is impossible with God. If a fisherman from Galilee can leave everything to follow Jesus and then deny him when it matters most, but still be the rock on which Christ builds the church, then none of us are ever too far gone. There is no gap or separation that's too big in our lives, that nothing is unforgivable, that God loves and welcomes all of us to come home. Friends, that if a man who was dead can come back to life, then Easter can change everything for us. That we can dare to hope the resurrection power of Easter was not just for Jesus, but it's for you and for me too. It's for our hurting and broken world, that nothing is impossible with God. So friends, on that first Easter, Mary and Mary dared to hope. And they saw Jesus. And that changed everything for them. What would change in your lives this Easter if you dared